Hi everyone, so today we're going to be talking about while loops. If you want some more background in while loops, you can go to the Java 8 Fundamentals book that's found as an ebook in the YorkU library. Alright, so the justification or the motivation behind while loops, basically we'll start with a hardware motivation. So if, for instance, you were using one of these Arduino boards, like the Grove board that we have right here, there's a button right here. And this button right here can be used as an on-off button or an emergency stop button. And what we can do is we can run a program, for instance, that will be monitoring that button and whether you've pressed it or not. And if you press it, then maybe it'll exit or it'll enter a different type of mode for the program. And so the hardware motivation here is that basically you can run a while loop that checks the status of that button, and if the status changes, then you exit the loop and do something else. All right, so let's take a look at some concrete examples here. So let's say that you have a loop and it begins with a count value of 0, and then we enter the while loop right here, and we say that the condition that we're going to be testing for the while loop is count is less than 100. And then as long as count remains less than 100, we'll print some stuff out to the screen. After we've printed something out, then we will increment the count and then go back and test this again right here. All right, so the loop basically can be visualized as a flowchart. And so over here on the left-hand side, we can see the basic general look of the flowchart. We start at the top right here, at this dot right here. We go into a decision diamond right there. And we ask, is the condition for the loop continuation true or false? If it's false, then we exit. If it's true, then we execute whatever is inside of the loop body. Okay, the printout and the increment change right here. In terms of specifically what we've got coded up in Java right here, what would it look like? You'd have the initialization of the count right here, then you have the decision diamond right here in which you ask, is the count less than 100? If it's less than 100, then we continue on to true, we print out stuff to the screen, and we go back again. If we end up exceeding the count, so we hit 100 or more, then it's false, and we move on from there. It would look something like this. So if I go into J shell, like this, and I paste in the code, like that. So this is the same code that you saw on the screen earlier. Basically, it'll print to the screen, welcome to Java, exclamation mark, 100 times. That's what it's going to do. Now, let's move on here. So let's imagine that the initial, the variable that we're interested in is initialized to a value of 3. So we say while j is less than 103, so we're going to go from 3 to testing to see if it's going to be 103 or less, or less than 103, sorry. Then we print out and then we increment the j. Now, we can do j++ or we can do j is equal to j+1. Either one is equivalent. So what would happen as we sort of loop through here? Let's take a look at the value of j. So we start off with the value of j of 3. Then the question we ask is j less than 103? Well, 3 is less than 103. So should we stay within the loop is true. So this is iteration number 1. And during this iteration, what we're going to do is we're going to print and then we're going to increment j. So we're going to do j++, or we say j is equal to j+1. Next time we go through the loop. Okay, so now j is equal to 4 because we did j++ in the previous round. Okay, 4 is less than 103, so we stay within the loop. It's true. This is iteration number 2. We are now going to print to the screen and we do j++. So we increment j. J is now 5. Is 5 less than 103? Yes, it is. This is the third iteration, this third time through the loop. We print to the screen and we increment j again. And we go on over and over and over again. You saw how many times that happened on the screen. Okay, we get to 102. All right, 102 is less than 103. We stay within the loop because we have a stay condition of true. This is the 100th iteration. So we've gone through the loop now 100 times. We have to execute the statement inside of this 100th time through the loop. So we print to the screen and we increment j. Now, j is 103. 103 is not less than 103. So the stay or enter the loop condition here is false. So we are no longer going to do anything within the body. We skip the body, we exit, okay? So we bypass whatever was inside of the loop for this particular iteration, okay? So the number of iterations, in this case 100, corresponds to the number of times the loop body is executed. The number of times that we test the state condition is 100 plus 1. Okay, so we basically have the last test that results in a false, but every other test, there were 100 of them, resulted in a true statement. Okay, so 100 times true, 1 times false. All right, let's take a look at another example right here. Let's compare the behavior of this program, or this sort of sub-program right here. Count is equal to 0, while count is less than 100, print and then increment. Let's compare it to count is equal to 1, count less than or equal to 100, print out to the screen. Now, I'm going to do this in JShell again, okay? So we're in JShell right now. Let's do the first one, but the code that I'm going to put in, just for the sake of brevity, we're going to say j is equal to 3, and instead of, oh no, that's the wrong code. Hold on. That's not what we're looking for. We're going to do this. We're going to do less than 5. Okay, this one right here. So instead of 100, we're going to make it less than 5. So you can see that it counts 5 times. All right. Now, if we go back here, we do the second version of this is count is equal to 1 and then count less than or equal to 100. Okay, so let's do it like this. Instead of 100, we're going to put 5. Okay, so you can easily see the comparison here. So instead of 100, I'm going to do 5 right here, but I'm going to start with a count of 1. Let's see what it outputs. And you can see that the output for the first version of the program and the second version of the program are exactly the same. So the outputs are not going to be any different. It's going to be the same. In the case of what's on the screen right here, it'll run 100 times. In the terms of what I showed in JShell, it was only 5 times. Okay, so the output to the screen didn't depend on the value of count. All right, now let's take a look at a slightly different version of this. So in this case right here, let's take a look at this version of the program, where what I've done over here is I've concatenated, or I've added on the value of the counter. Okay, count is equal to 0, count less than 100, and then in this case, count is equal to 1, count is less than or equal to 100. And in both cases, I'm going to be concatenating the actual value of the count variable. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but in JShell. And in JShell, I'm going to have it count to 5, so we can see what the difference is easily. Okay, so I do it like this, and we can see that for the first version, it goes welcome to Java 0, welcome to Java 1. Oh, there's an exclamation mark right there. Okay, but basically it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. Now, for the second version of the program, like that, where what I've done is I've changed the initial count and I've made it less than or equal to 5. I still count the same, or I still print to the screen the same number of times. So I've printed 5 times, I've printed 5 times right here. But the actual thing that is printed to the screen is not the same, because the number here, the count value, goes from 0 to 4 at the first version and 1 to 5 in the second version. So are the outputs different? Yes, they are. They still count exactly the same number of times. They still loop through the same number of times. But what is output to the screen is different. So the behavior is slightly different. So this is an intro to the while loop. It works similarly to the while loops in other languages like MATLAB or C. And there are ways to make sure that the counts occur the same number of times that you want. The examples I've given here have an incrementing value inside of it. But in terms of things like the hardware platforms that we use, we can also use the while loop to test conditions that aren't being incremented inside the loop. They can be sensed values. They can be inputs from other places that update based on conditions that aren't within the program or depend on other functions or other methods, and will exit based on those sort of conditions. So it turns out that in the end, the while loop is actually a really good loop system compared to the for loop, for instance, in cases where you don't actually know the number of times that you want to loop through. If there are conditions that can change over time or can change based on sort of, from the program perspective, unpredictable reasons, the while loop can actually have very good advantages over, for instance, the for loop. All right, take care, everyone.